Welcome back. I am John P. Today, we are going to be talking about probably the best luxury watch collection under $1 million or thereabout. This is a watch collection that is owned by a famous country music musician known as Luke Bryan. Now, I will admit that hunting down the watches in this collection was actually pretty difficult, but why I continued to do it is I saw them wearing a very interesting watch by H. Moser. Yes, believe it or not, someone notable wearing an H. Moser watch, a watch brand I've been talking about on this channel for years now. Also, Federico from Federico Talks Watches speaks very highly of this high-end independent manufacturer brand. But I saw that him wearing an H. Moser watch, and it got me kind of going down this rabbit hole of discovering probably, at least in my opinion, what is the best celebrity watch collection under $1 million or thereabouts. You know, many celebrities or those kind of in the public eye just, call up their watch dealer or AD and say, I'll take one of what John Mayer's having. I'll take one of what Ed Sheeran's having. And that is not what Luke Bryan, this country musician, did. So we're going to cover that in just a second. But today on the wrist, Rolex 1016 Frogfoot dial. You always ask and I always tell. Also, please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com, where we do carry many H. Moser watches, generally pre-owned. And also you can find me on Instagram, The Real John P, as well as, yes, TikTok. Now I'm on TikTok. I'm a TikToker. Go figure. The Real John P. So let's jump right into it. The first watch that he has in his collection, and this is a phenomenal watch, limited to 50 pieces from H. Moser. This is going to be an H. Moser Pioneer in stainless steel with the perpetual calendar in the funky blue colorway. Now, this is a very limited production watch, as most of the H. Moser watches are. The Pioneer is supposed to be their more sporty line, but now we have a perpetual calendar, so it's kind of hypocrite in of itself, right? What do you need a perpetual calendar for while you're sporting? But the reality is, it's a very high-end, sophisticated watch. And this particular watch does take someone that wants to be in the know, that wants to be a watch collector and kind of dig a little bit deeper than just picking a Rolex off the shelf. So he gets all the respect in the world from me for having this in his collection, not only having it in his collection, also wearing this particular watch on the cover of People magazine. I don't know if the magazine is even relevant anymore, or really any magazines for that matter, but he wears an H. Moser perpetual calendar on People magazine. So you get big props and respect from me on that one. And this watch actually will be retailing for about $40,000, but the prices are not advertised because, yes, it's limited production and it's a very high-end piece from the manufacturer, so you have to generally reach out in order to obtain one. Now, next we have another brand and model that I have been talking about for years. One of my favorite models, though, maybe a little bit less of a favorite version of the watch. This is a GP, a Girard-Perregaux Laureato skeleton. Yes, a person that is this notable wearing a GP Laureato. Phenomenal. I love to see it. Once again, great choice here, and it really shows that he's a watch geek. He loves these things. I love this watch as well. Now, this is probably the best GP Laureato that you can get. This is going to be retailing for $43,000 US dollars, and the GP Laureato is just a phenomenal alternative to the AP Royal Oak. And the Nautilus, though, as we'll see in the rest of the list here, he's certainly not shy to those brands and models, but took it a step further, put a very cool watch collector model in his collection. Now, next, Vacheron. He's wearing a Vacheron. A lot of respect once again. He's wearing a Vacheron Overseas 41 millimeter. This is going to be the 4500 model with gold case and featured on a rubber strap. Very cool sporty watch. I love this watch. The Overseas doesn't get a lot of popularity in precious metal because people are kind of gravitated towards them as an alternative to the AP Royal Oak, as well as the Nautilus when they couldn't get them at the height of the market. A little more available in terms of the APs. The Nautilus, forget it, still. Prices have come down, but they're still not as available as they were 7 years ago. Though the reality is this is still a phenomenal watch in gold. Very cool. It's sporty, but it's gold. It's precious metal, high-end watch, and this is going to be $40,000. It seems like a bit of a trend here, $40,000 watches. I don't know if he's, kind of out there looking to buy watches and he's like, I only buy watches that cost roughly $40,000. I don't know. It's a little bizarre, but that seems to be kind of his price point that he sets the mark on. Now, next we have another Vacheron Constantin watch. This is a very cool watch. This is a retrograde patrimony, and this is, not a model that's made anymore. It's out of production, but I like it. It's very cool, and it reminds me of time of Vacheron, where people didn't really acknowledge the brand. It's certainly from a collection that people don't really appreciate as much as, the overseas line. Now, this retrograde is awesome because it features the day and the date on it, and the hands are going to pop back once they reach the end. The retrograde complication, being that straight line or seemingly straight line instead of a circular option or, a window to display the day or the date. So it pops back once it hits the end and starts over for the days of the week or the date. Very cool watch. A lot of respect on this one once again. Now we have a brand that I think has lost their way. They've kind of gone in the vein of Hublot. Not saying anything negative against Hublot, but I do believe they lost their way from when Roger Dubuis was producing the homage line and some of the more classic, both in style as well as form and function watches. Now they have an Excalibur. I think he's wearing a Roger Dubuis Excalibur here, though it's difficult to see in some of the photos. We'll get into that later. Some of the photos with the models, it can be kind of difficult to show. Probably doesn't fit the country music persona per se to be wearing, these ultra high-end watches sometimes, but we have a Roger Dubuis Excalibur, I believe, and these lines generally start at about $50,000 US. Very cool. You don't see many people wearing these watches. Sometimes in the LatAm market you do, or the Eastern Europe, but not a lot in the, in North America do I see modern day Roger Dubuis Excaliburs floating around. Now, we're going to move on to the Patek Philippe's that he has in his collection. By the way, he has so many watches. I've condensed this to the best. He has way more out there, and this is going to be moving on to Patek Philippe. Now, there's some heavy hitters in this Patek Philippe section. First, he's spotted with the Aquanaut Travel Time in steel. Hot watch, very difficult to get your hands on. I mean, I'm sure that either you're paying over retail or, probably there's a country music fan somewhere at an AD or a boutique, and they're going to be able to get your hands on this watch. The watch retails at $40, sells aftermarket or in the gray market for much higher. Very cool watch that so many collectors really do desire and still want to this day. But rolling on to the other Aquanauts that he has, right? What collection is not complete without the Aquanaut in rose gold on rubber? I love this because it has that chocolate rubber strap that paired with that kind of that chocolatey dial in the way that the dial pattern is. It kind of reminds me of a chocolate bar. Now, I'm not going to get into the technical specs of this watch because this video would be several hours long, but as you know, sometimes I introduce that into videos in the future, so maybe I'll do that here for the Patek Philippe watches. I love this watch, very cool, sporty, precious metal on rubber, seems to be a trend in his collection as well. Now, into probably a more impressive in terms of the watch complications Patek Philippe watch that he does also have in his collection. This is going to be the 5326G annual calendar travel time. Wow, this watch was recently announced and released, and this is a phenomenal watch that I have not seen on anyone else's wrist except for him. I haven't seen it on the street. I haven't seen it in the stores. Even the boutiques, even there was a Patek Philippe authorized dealer here where I live, and they're a pretty notable A-list shop, and they weren't even sure when they were going to get one in for their best clientele. So truly, he has a bit of pull with Patek Philippe to be able to put this on his wrist. It's kind of interesting because it looks very sporty, but then it's very complicated Patek Philippe watch. That's the direction Patek is going. They make a non-complicated version of this Calatrava as well, though this version of the watch with the annual calendar in the travel time is going to be clocking in at about $77,000 US, with some of them listed online for more than double that. Kind of a name your price watch, I think, at this time, considering how new it is. So this isn't the end of the Patek Philippe watches that he owns, of course. Now, he has a 5960. Now, the interesting thing about this 5960 Patek Philippe watch is, well, first, it was the first in-house automatic chronograph watch from Patek Philippe, right? So Patek Philippe came out with this automatic in-house movement that is going to be an automatic watch. Previously, they were using manual wind for this set of complications here. But interestingly enough, in the photos, it looks like he's wearing the platinum version of the watch, which has an entirely white register at the 6 o'clock, though, interestingly enough, it's on a bracelet. So the bracelet was the stainless steel version of the watch, which is going to be the 1A versus the P. Patek Philippe denotes stainless steel watches traditionally with 1A versus the P for the platinum. And so I probably think that if it's on a bracelet, that it's going to be the 1A, it's going to be the stainless steel version, and maybe the photos were doctored or the contrast or something along those lines with the pictures to make it look like an entirely white subdial. But it's possible that maybe he put a stainless bracelet on the platinum version of the watch, or potentially there is a one-off platinum bracelet for the watch. I haven't seen this watch with a platinum bracelet out there, but crazier things have happened in the watch world. Any Patek Philippe fanatics out there, I'd love to see and hear your thoughts on this in the comments below. So let's roll on to Audemars Piguet. He has so many Audemars Piguet watches. Now, first, he has a Royal Oak chronograph in steel, and it looks like he has a couple of variations of this watch. Maybe over the years, he swapped it in, traded it up, but it looks like, probably going to have the 41 millimeter size. This is a very hot watch, and people love it. It wears bigger than 41. It's a chronograph. It has the pushers. It's a bit of a larger style. Very cool classic watch. So many people want this watch still to this day. Prices have come down once again because of the market, but still ultra desirable watch, especially the newer versions of it. This is going to be clocking in at $35,000. Now, the next AP watch he has is the new diver called the Khaki with the dark green dial, as well as the green strap. This was announced towards the end of 2019, started shipping in 2020, and this changed the diver line, which many people started ignoring, right? Audemars Piguet, as they became more popular with the Royal Oak and with the rise of the watch market, the diver line was kind of ignored. It was a little bit off-putting to some. It seemed a little bit more juvenile. The markers were a little bit thicker and plump. It didn't quite fit the aesthetic of the traditional Royal Oak watches that people really wanted. This kind of that level of sophistication. So when this came out, it put something different into it that made it more sporty, more, kind of strong and pronounced in terms of those indices, but a little less juvenile. And so people really love this watch. It comes in a couple of different colorways, but I personally like the khaki, which happens to be green. They call it khaki. I love this watch. And this watch retails for $30,000. So, it's certainly a heavy hitting piece, though I haven't seen many of these floating around out there. So I do think that it's very desirable watch that people are having trouble getting their hands on. Obviously not Luke Bryan. With the Royal Oaks, once again, we're going to be getting into the Royal Oak in rose gold. Now, it can be difficult to tell the exact model, but I think it's probably a newer version of the Royal Oak in rose gold, probably the 41. And these are going to be retailing for north of 60, about 65,000 US dollars, selling over retail. And this is a watch that so many celebrities and people that are in kind of that public scene, public eye are currently wearing. You see it out there a lot. Very heavy hitting piece. It makes a statement. It's a Royal Oak. It's in precious metal, and it's just a solid watch. Very cool watch. And this isn't the end of his Royal Oaks, right? This is clearly a Royal Oak fan. He also has the offshore chrono with the rubber clad bezel. This is going to be the rubber clad watch on the rubber bracelet, and the bezels kind of chip off over time. So it makes a lot of sense that he kind of upgraded to recent AP models. But this watch was so hot for a while because it gave you kind of that Hublot appearance with a different contrast color bezel and very sporty, right? It's an offshore, so it's thicker, but it has that black bezel. It adds some kind of depth and contrast to it, so people really liked it. Fortunately, the bezels just don't hold up. Now you can find these in rose gold or gold precious metal out there for about 30,000 US dollars, sometimes less depending the bezel condition. Next, we have his Rolex watches. He has it's seemingly many Rolex watches, though some of them are in pictures that are much older. They're blurry. It's difficult to tell, but at least he has a couple of modern, heavy-hitting Rolex pieces. The first is going to be a gold Sky Dweller on the Oyster Flex. That's a newer thing for Rolex to start putting their precious metal watches like this on the Oyster Flex. The Oyster Flex was pretty much exclusive for the Daytonas for a while, and then it got into some of the other lines, including what we have here, and this is going to be the Sky Dweller. So very cool to see this watch. He's actually pictured, I think, like fishing and stuff in it. So for the precious metals, I don't know that makes a ton of sense, but the rubber kind of does. So the Sky Dweller in rubber on the Oyster Flex, as they call their rubber strap, is going to be, once again, $40,000 US. These don't trade for really too much over retail price. Precious metal Rolex, unless it's super rare, tends to be kind of level for the most part. And with the precious metal Rolex, we have a white gold, so seemingly stainless steel, but this is going to be the Yachtmaster 42. The Yachtmaster 42 takes that Yachtmaster 1, I guess you'd call it, form factor from that 40 size up to the 42, pops it in precious metal, and adds kind of a younger, playful dial, which you didn't really see with the older versions of this watch in the 40, like the platinum bezel slash platinum case, right? So this is going to be in white gold. Very cool. I love to see this. But once again, it's a 42 size. It's much larger. It's not that hot of a watch, especially in white gold, when people generally want that look of this in the stainless steel because it's harder and it's just worth a little bit less. So for so many reasons, people generally are gravitated towards the stainless steel watches, but this watch does come in at about $30,000. So still very solid piece from, of course, a very solid watch manufacturer. And last, we're going to cover 5 watches really that come from a sprinkling of brands that show, yeah, he is a watch collector. Look at these other brands. First, we have a Breitling Premier B01 chronograph. This is just an interesting watch, right? This is a watch that's going to be clocking in at a price point of about $9,000, so much less than the other heavier hitting pieces in his collection, but respectable, and it's going to have that in-house Breitling movement, so there is some acknowledgement there, probably of the mechanics behind it, and it was, during a time where Breitling was reinventing themselves, and this is just a very solid, everyday casual wear watch, right? Very cool watch for a watch guy. I like it and appreciate it. And it shows, hey, it's not just about having the most expensive watches, though it's still, a fairly unaffordable price point compared to something like a Seiko, right? But still, very cool watch. Very much like to see this watch. But this next IWC watch, yes, IWC is a truly rare watch, but so interesting and cool. Very limited production. This is going to be an IWC Pilot watch with a perpetual calendar, limited for the Top Gun franchise, but it comes with these red accents that are kind of dark, so there's not too much contrast from the rest of the watch. It's very sporty, large watch, and comes on that kind of canvas or sailcloth strap, so it's sporty, but yeah, it's a perpetual calendar. It's kind of that irony we see sometimes in super high-end watches, or high-end watches, luxury goods for that matter. But this was a boutique-only watch, and this watch had a retail of about $37,000. There's one floating around out there for $30,000 right now, but it's a very niche piece for someone that just loves that style. What do you think about this IWC watch? I'd love to see it and hear it. Comments below. Now, next, we're going to get into 2 Panerai watches. This is pretty cool, right? Yes, Panerai watches. We have probably a Panerai PAM 590, the 8-day, with a price of about $6,000. Panerai watches generally all look the same, especially at a distance. There are some exceptions, right? The chronographs, the dive watches, but a lot of the watches look the same from a distance. You can't tell what movement's in it. You can't tell totally what the dial is. So probably a 590 here, which I think, in terms of what Panerai offers today, is kind of an entry-level Panerai in a way. So very cool to see that watch. Rugged, durable, and really classic Panerai if we want to think about it, with that 8-day power reserve. So it's kind of like something basic, but something much more sophisticated, but at the same time, a very basic watch. Now, the next Panerai watch that he does have is certainly not a basic watch. This is going to be a Carbotech watch. So kind of the lines from Panerai produced with carbon, right? This is going to be a very special line from Panerai that is more rugged and durable than stainless steel, and it's going to be lighter, and it's something they focused on, kind of the direction of the brand going with these alternative materials. And this is going to be a dive watch. It's going to be a submersible Carbotech, and there's different versions of the Panerai submersible Carbotech watches, different colorways, different versions that have colored hands and blue hands, and they made some in the past previously as well. But these do retail current versions of the watch for about $18,000 US. So very cool Panerai watch that really takes, I believe, someone to be a nut about these kind of things. Like we all are, we're watching these videos, and of course I'm producing these videos, right? So I'm certainly in the group. So guys, what do we think about Luke Bryan's watch collection here? Personally, I think it's phenomenal. The H. Moser, right? The H. Moser Pioneer, who wears those? The Girard-Perregaux Laureato, who wears those? The limited edition IWC watches, a little sprinkle of everything. You had the Richard Mille, you had the Rolex, the Patek, the Audemars Piguet, but you had the something that the watch geeks and the collectors like us are often drawn towards and enjoy. So I really love to see that. And it's all coming into about that $1 million price point. And this is pretty phenomenal considering, he could have just plopped down, $500K on a super rare vintage Rolex chronograph, another, couple of $100K on a super rare vintage Rolex something else du jour, but instead took the time, bought what he was interested in. He's obviously wearing the watches. It's not tucked away in the safe. And I'd love to see that in watch collections, not only at this price point, but higher and lower. And it's seemingly today that you don't always see that, especially when mixed in with some watches that truly are kind of that blue chip hot, alternative asset watch, right? The Pateks, the Audemars Piguets, the things like that. Let me know your thoughts and opinions, comments below. Love to see it and hear it. Guys, please do not forget to check out delraywatch.com, my Instagram, The Real John P, and yes, my TikTok. It sounds silly just saying it, but my TikTok, The Real John P. Thanks, guys. You've been chatting with John P.